And of course, we are coming to you live from Kastelot in Kampala, Uganda. The official campaign period, like I told you, closes at midnight tonight. But as this happens, we saw Dr. Besigye was campaigning in Kampala. President Yoweri Museveni is also campaigning in Kololo, still Kampala. Amama Mbabazi was campaigning in Kampala and also Entebbe. So they are all trying to make their last impressions on voters. Not only the presidential race, we also have a parliamentary race. All this happening, of course, on Thursday 18th. That is a day from today. That is tomorrow, of course. Tomorrow is Wednesday. Thursday is when the election will be held. But as this happens, Janet, there's some latest news here. Dr. Besigye is now saying he knows the election will not be free and fair. He will participate nonetheless. President Yoweri Museveni, while addressing delegates today before he went to Kololo, said he will not allow any parallel counting of votes, and that is what Dr. Besigye was talking about. Sylvia Chebet has been on the campaign trail and now brings us his story.
Campaigns here in Uganda entered the home stretch Tuesday. The two front-runners, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni of the reigning National Resistance Movement and his longtime opponent, Dr. Besigye of the Forum for Democratic Change, choosing to end their campaigns in the vote-rich capital, Kampala. Museveni may have been in power for 30 years, but political commentators reckon Uganda experienced stability and economic growth during those years. So as he gave his final address at the Kololo Independence Stadium, he promised voters a continuity of the gains his NRM government has made. Meanwhile, his closest challenger, Dr. Besigye, who is contesting for presidency for the fourth time now, called a news conference at his residence before heading out for his final campaign rally. This coming a day after he was blocked from campaigning in the city center and detained on 2 occasions in a standoff that left a man dead, others injured, and some detained. Voter turnout, however, is Besigye's most critical concern. Studies of the past 3 elections in Uganda have shown a pattern of high voter turnout in areas where President Museveni enjoys support and much lower turnout in opposition strongholds.
Turn up in your millions and cast your votes. Let all our people vote by midday, and let us stay at the polling stations and guard our votes.
To guard their votes, however, Besigye called on voters to defy the Electoral Commission's order banning entry into a polling center with a phone.
The presence of camera phones will be a great deterrent to those who wish to rig the election.
The opposition has set up parallel tallying centers ahead of the Thursday poll. The Electoral Commission, which Besigye accuses of being partisan, warned against attempts to usurp its mandate of announcing the results. President Museveni echoed those sentiments as he met NRM delegates in central Uganda ahead of the Kampala rally.
Nobody will announce results in Uganda. That will be the shortcut to result. The attempt to do that.
Election has no chance of being free or fair from the start. We'll just simply continue fighting for fighting for our voices. Because you see, the rigging of election is taking away the voices of the people, that is all.
Uganda is not Ivory Coast. And it's not Kenya. Uganda is Uganda, led by people who fought wars.
Against the backdrop of a heated political atmosphere, the stage is now set for Thursday's contest at the ballot. Each candidate hoping that they have sufficiently convinced the Ugandan voter to consider them for that ultimate prize. Sylvia Chebet, Citizen TV in Kampala, Uganda.
Right, Janet, of course, campaigns, like I said, comes to close at midnight tonight. A lot of campaigning is still going on in Kampala and beyond. Tomorrow there will be no campaigning, only preparations, and especially we'll be waiting to hear from the Electoral Commission and their final plans ahead of the election that will be held on Thursday, 18th February. So keep watching. Citizen TV will be covering that election live to you, but we are not done yet We're taking a short break now with the big question, but when we come back, we'll be speaking to veteran journalist and commentator on current affairs, also the owner of the independent magazine in Uganda, Andrew Mwenda, will be telling us more of what you need to know about the Uganda election 2016. Stay tuned. Right, welcome back to the big question live from Kasia Lodge in Kampala, Uganda. Like we told you, campaigns here close at midnight tonight. Elections will be held on Thursday, 18th February. With me tonight on the big question is veteran journalist, commentator on current affairs, and the owner of the independent magazine in Uganda, Andrew Mwenda. Thank you so much for making time for the big question tonight.
Pleased to be with you.
Thank you. We're talking about the Uganda election. Of course, it's a high-stakes election. And that is why we have Andrew here to try and make sense of it all and pack for us what is going on here and why it's really a high-stake election. First, it's been said it's a two-horse race and a pony. You agree with that?
Yes, yes. This is a race between President Yoweri Museveni and challenger Dr. Kizza Besigye. Ama Mambaba is the third candidate. Will be lucky to get 5%
of the vote.
Yes.
So he has no impact at all.
He has no impact. You see, because there are two issues at contention. The maintenance of the status quo and radical change. Museveni's campaign slogan is steady progress, meaning more of the same or keep the status quo.
Yeah.
Besigye is saying we want radical change. Now, Uganda has two elements. You have people who are rural, poor, and old. Those prefer the maintenance of the status quo. They don't want instability. You have many young people. Museveni has been in power for 30 years.
Yeah.
You have very many young people aged between 18 and 35 who are products of Uganda's rapid economic growth over the last 30 years. They are educated, they are urbanized, and they cannot find jobs. We have high youth unemployment. And those people want a radical change in the status quo.
Right.
So Besigye appeals to them.
Right.
Mbabazi failed to position himself effectively in the political marketplace because his argument was, one, yes, Uganda has performed well. We need to maintain the status quo, but we need to change the president. I felt that was a very poor position.
His entrance does not enter to anyone of any of the two's political base at all.
Initially, he was eating into Dr. Besigye's political base, but because he lacks organizational infrastructure backed by money, he was unable to. You see, Besigye in this candidate brings something called passion. His campaign is inspired. It has a spirit in it. Museveni's strength is brand and the machinery of the state and the money that he can command.
Right. Who do you think, whose campaign, like you said, I mean, steady progress from Museveni, promise of change from Besigye, and you're talking about the passion. From your own experience, which campaign do you think has been very effective?
I think that by far, Besigye has had the most passionate and inspired campaign. Museveni has had the most shambolic campaign. Please remember that President Yoweri Museveni and his ruling party, the NRM, spent the last 2 years in internecine warfare within the party, fighting Amama Mbabazi, who was Prime Minister and Secretary General. So by the time the battle against Amama Mbabazi ended, the NRM and President Yoweri Museveni were financially, politically, and morally exhausted. And they had spent so much time fighting internally, they did not spend enough time fighting Besigye. So Besigye was able to exploit that space to be able to build his momentum. And the NRM entered the race when it was very, very weak and exhausted. And that's why you see Besigye has a lot of momentum. Yes.
During his campaign. And you think, what about Museveni? I mean, he doesn't have an edge. He doesn't have an edge.
Museveni has one advantage. Remember that Uganda has 80% of its population in rural areas. For the first time, we have seen Besigye penetrate rural areas. But his strongest appeal is among male youth. Museveni...
Not female.
Not females. He's very weak in females, except in certain parts of eastern Uganda. I have traveled 3,700 kilometers across the whole of Uganda, holding meetings with people. I can say, without fear of contradiction, that women have not shifted in any significant way towards Besigye. Two, older people and poorer people, regardless of age, have remained with Museveni. And then when you go to northern Uganda, where in 2006 Besigye was getting something like 82%, this time Museveni is going to win northern Uganda by 60 to 65%. So overall,
Museveni...
That's why,
because of what you've said, are you talking about
because, not only because of my personal anecdotal observations, but also because of opinion polls, Museveni is likely to win even in the first round by about 51 to 55%.
You're talking about northern Uganda.
Yes.
If you're talking about the female, the youth,
yes,
especially not really supporting Besigye, but again you're talking about the rural population being with Museveni. We know the youth vote is very important in these elections. If it has been said, one in every second voter this time round will be a youthful person.
Yes.
Yet you're saying Besigye is the one who appeals to the youth more than Museveni. So how does that work?
Because remember that Besigye has favorable sentiment in his favor. The weakness of his campaign is he lacks organizational infrastructure. You see, a campaign requires a combination of things. First of all, you need to have the right message. Besigye has the right and most powerful message in this campaign. We need radical change. But you also need to have organizational infrastructure to convert favorable sentiment into actual voter turnout and votes at the ballot box. But Besigye's organizational infrastructure is very weak. If you look at the statistics, we have 290 constituencies, geographical constituencies. Besigye's party is participating in only 203. So you have 1/3 of the constituencies, they do not have candidates. If you go lower to what we call sub-counties in Uganda, we have 1,400 sub-counties, and Besigye's party is participating in about 690. So they are in less than half. So the lower you go the deeper you go into rural areas and the lower you go on the layers of local government, the thinner is his organizational infrastructure. Now, two things happen when you don't have effective organization at the grassroots. One, you don't have people to rally your guys, your supporters to show up and vote. But two, you may not have sufficient numbers of your own supporters to be at the ballot booth. To defend and protect your ballot,
although he has made it very clear today that he's made sure all of his supporters and party agents will be in all the polling stations. He's talked about that. I will talk about the polling stations with you later on. But again, when you're talking about Museveni, the change you're talking about, is it just a thirst for change?
Yes.
Because he's been there for so long? Or?
Yes, Museveni has been there for 30 years, and I think there is widespread Museveni fatigue. For many young people, even if Besigye represents change, it is not necessarily that Besigye has promised them anything concrete that they can touch and feel. But Besigye promises them change. People are, I think, tired of seeing the same face over their lifetime. Imagine if you were born in 1986, now you are exactly 30 years, and you have on and on one president. So there is a large section of male youth, even female youth, who think there should be change. And that's Museveni's vulnerability. Another
key thing, before we move on, another key thing that they've pointed out, both of them have pointed out, and especially President Museveni, but also again, Besigye, when he was addressing the press today, earlier, talked about him going to every part of Uganda. He was talking about it like it's not something he used to do in the previous campaigns. Is that going to change anything now that you're talking about Museveni's strength in rural Uganda?
Oh, let me show you this. Besigye has grown largely because his campaign this time has been slightly different. He did not only campaign in urban areas, he was able to take his campaign even to rural areas, rural trading centers, and be able to reach voters. Two, he has made a good effort to appeal, to try to reach out to demographics that previously he was not appealing to, like women. But I don't think he has made sufficient progress on the women vote. So although he has been able to turn a couple of a good percentage of women in his favor, it is not significant to alter the dynamics of the campaign. Please remember that we have had opinion polls, and they are putting Besigye at 28 to 32. They are putting him 51 to 55. Today at his press conference, Besigye said the opinion polls do not tell the truth. Then he contradicted himself. He said Ugandans are so desperate for change, they have been turning in massive numbers at my rallies, which is true. They have been giving me money, goats and chicken, which is true. How can Ugandans be so courageous to be seen publicly with Besigye, giving him money, giving him goats and chicken, but afraid to tell a pollster that we support Besigye? That's nonsense. So the opinion polls will give you a rough, or at least a good estimate, not an accurate, but a rough estimate of where this vote is. That Museveni is leading by a margin of about 20% is beyond a doubt, on the basis of those opinion polls.
But of course, we'll wait. We'll wait on the basis of the opinion polls. We'll wait and see how that happens, because you've also told us Besigye's campaign has been very lively and very inspired. He said he's very confident about it, but we saw again the opposition again today saying They know the election is not going to be free and fair, talking about what has happened in the run-up to the election, talking about the Electoral Commission and whether it will conduct this election fairly, talking about yesterday and the violence that was witnessed in Kampala. Of course, the police said Besigye was trying to access areas that were not pre-agreed upon. Besigye has denied that, saying he sought clearance. All this happening, bearing in mind what Besigye has said, what the police said, do you think the election is going to be free and fair yourself, from your experience?
Perhaps, are you asking me about the election or the balloting?
The election.
Because you see, the election is, in many ways, the ground is not leveled. The incumbent has the machinery of the state, has the resources of the state to be able to campaign against Besigye. Besigye can only rely on his own personal income or contributions from his members. To that degree, the election is not fair in the sense that they do not have a level playing field. Will the polling be fair? I think that yes, it will be. Will the tallying be fair? If the NRM feels that they are at a disadvantage, they will certainly do something with the tally of results. It's very difficult to cheat.
They will certainly do something with the tallying of the results?
Yeah, I would imagine
this is
so.
From your experience?
Because this is what I'm thinking about. It is very difficult to rig elections when you are weak. You rig when you are strong. So if NRM has to rig elections, it has to identify those areas where it is very strong. If vote turnout is, say, 60%, they can tick the ballots of those who have not shown up and tick their names and increase voter turnout to 90%. But if you go to a place where you are very weak, you cannot rig there. So in which case, therefore, that the NRM can only rig in those areas where it is strong if they identify it early that they are likely to lose the election.
If they identify it early.
Yes.
Okay. Again, back to my question. I mean, you've explained there could be a possibility. Yes. The election and the balloting is saying is a different thing. All things said and done and what they have said, the opposition, I mean, you don't think there's a level playing field yourself?
No.
So you don't think it's going to be exactly free and fair?
No.
You don't think it's going to be free and fair? Okay, well,
if the opposition wants to win an election, they must have to win an election that is unfree and unfair.
Right. They've talked about the rules by Electoral Commission, like not being allowed to carry your mobile phones with cameras on the polling stations. Do you think that is?
It's a very complicated issue, Hussein. You see, I am also very conscious of certain things. You know, we are living in the age of Photoshop. I can manipulate a video to tell a story that I want. So if you allow me to go with my iPhone and I record things at a polling booth, I can manipulate them to present an image that I want. So there are two risks. It's good for the opposition to have cameras there so that they can take pictures, but it is also possible.
Opposition only, anybody,
exactly,
everybody, every citizen of Uganda is going to vote.
You see, the person who needs to have a contrary tallying process outside of the government structures is the opposition. You get it? So if I am on opposition, if I am Besigye, I would want to have my phones there and I take videos in order to ensure that should anyone tamper with the results, I can expose them. But there is a second risk. The second risk is actually you have Photoshop. I can manipulate a video, I can manipulate a picture to produce what I want. So I think that the government is also right to say, no. There must be one centralized
So what outweighs the other? Because the opposite could also be true. You could see something going wrong, but you cannot prove it.
What outweighs is decide where you stand. If you are in the opposition, you need to have your cameras there. If you are on the side of government, you need to not have those cameras there.
Right, and he's also talking about the need to have a parallel tallying.
That is also dangerous. You know why it is dangerous? Why should anybody trust? Besigye does not trust the Electoral Commission. Why? Because it is appointed by himself. Now, Besigye is also appointing his own Electoral Commission to tally the results. Still, it does not give an impartial tallying of the results. I think that's the contradiction that Uganda faces. Until such a time when we have an Electoral Commission that is independent of all the political contestants, then you can be sure that the tallying is secure. But I think setting up a rival tallying center is replicating the very criticism we are putting on the government.
But here you are again.
By the way, I should also tell you that I think according to the rules, the opposition are supposed to be in the tallying at the tallying center of the Electoral Commission.
Yeah, but here
is NRM and 7 people allowed to be at the opposition tallying center? I don't know.
Here again, you're saying you're not sure about this election being free and fair.
Yes.
I mean,
because I have told you that the electoral...
the thing is, if you have a parallel tallying center, not only, I mean, it could be any other institution, the media, whichever institution has the resources to have a parallel tallying center. If they can do that, what would be the problem? If you're saying yourself you're not sure about
I would say
the Electoral Commission,
if there was an impartial civil organization that has a parallel tallying center, that would be a very good. An impartial media organization, like say the Monitor newspaper or the Independent newspaper. I think we are the only independent and impartial media organization in Uganda. Okay, most impartial and independent. If at Independent had a tallying center, then you would know that you are getting the right results. But if it is by FDC, of course, what do you expect from a pig but a grunt? All right. Finally, Besigye has said if he loses, the struggle will continue. What do you think about Museveni? Do you think he will concede? He's talked about it before, I know, a week ago. Most unlikely. I don't think that NRM can accept to lose. I do not think that the nature of the organization that NRM is, a revolutionary movement that went to the bush, conducted an armed struggle and captured, dismantled the state from below. Movements like that, you can see them in Cuba, in Vietnam, in North Korea, in China, in Rwanda, in Eritrea and Ethiopia and Mozambique and Zimbabwe. They never tend to lose power. Even when they suffer prolonged economic atrophy, they don't lose power. You have seen when they have lost elections in Zimbabwe in 2009, in Ethiopia 2005, they have manipulated the results and retained power. He's 71 now. Final question. He's 71 now. Mugabe is 92. I'm talking about Museveni. He's 71. Yes. The Ugandan constitution talks about the age limit for anybody who wants to be president at 75. He said he'll follow the constitution. Do you think this will be his last job at the president? I don't think so. Regardless of what Museveni says, I think that if he is sworn in as president again and nothing happens to him, there will be a movement to amend the constitution and remove age limits. Take it from me, I am willing to bet $100 on that. $100, okay. Yes. Thank you so much. Andrew Mwendo is a veteran journalist, commentator on current affairs, and the owner of the Independent magazine in Uganda. Thank you so much for making time. And also a tribal chief. Also a tribal chief, he says, in Western Uganda. No, in the whole of Africa. In the whole of Africa, okay. The Igwe of Africa. Okay, thank you so much for making time. For the big question, like we told you, we are live at Cassia Lodge. It's just a few hours now to the official campaign period to come to a close. Tomorrow, like we told you, we'll be waiting to hear what the preparations of the Electoral Commission are. And of course, on Thursday, Ugandans go to the ballot. You can count on Citizen TV to be covering for you all that will be happening in Kampala, Uganda. We'll take a short break now on the big question.